My brother took my college savings to upgrade my car, so I reported him to the police. I'm 19, and I've worked since I was 15 so I could afford community college next fall. I saved $11,000, and I kept it in a savings account I almost never touched. My brother is 17 and doesn't work. Mom always says he has anxiety and can't handle a job, so she keeps bailing him out. When he begged for a PS5 at 14, we were behind on rent, but she still found the money. That's how it's always been, and Mom backs him every time. Last year, I bought a used 2015 Honda Civic with my own cash. It wasn't pretty, but it got me to Target and back, and it was my only way to keep my shifts. My brother started asking to borrow it the same day I brought it home. I said no, over and over. At first, he didn't even have a permit. Later, he got one, and the asking turned into pressure. He'd say, "All my friends are driving. I look stupid." I'd say, "Not my problem. I need my car." Mom would pull me aside and whisper that I should be a good brother and share. 3 weeks ago, I woke up at 6 a.m. for an opening shift. I walked outside and my car was gone. Not in the driveway, not on the street, nowhere. I called Mom, panicking, and she sounded annoyed. She said, "He took it to the DMV for his driving test." I said, "You let him take my car?" She told me to relax because he'd be back soon. I texted my brother to bring it back right now, and he left me on red. I had to call my manager and say I couldn't get in. She went quiet, then said, "This can't happen again," and hung up. My brother rolled back in around 2 p.m., hours late. He tossed my keys onto the counter with a smug little smile. He said he failed because the instructor was a jerk. Mom patted his shoulder like he'd just had a rough day. I went outside to check my car, and that's when I noticed it. The windows were darker. The rims weren't mine. When I started the engine, it sounded louder, like it was growling. My brother leaned on the doorframe and said, "Looks better now, right?" Mom said, "Don't start. He's already upset." 2 days later, I went to move money between accounts, and my balance looked wrong. I logged in again, slower, and my heart dropped. $8,200 was missing. 3 withdrawals on 3 different days, all while I was at work. My hands shook so hard, I almost dropped my phone. I called the bank, and they said the withdrawals were done in person with ID. Then the woman added, "A joint account holder can do that." That's when I knew Mom had helped him. I ran downstairs and asked my brother, "Did you take money from my savings?" He didn't even pause his game. He just shrugged and said, "Mom signed off on it." I turned to Mom and said, "Tell me you didn't." She wouldn't look at me. She said, "I'm on that account because I helped you open it. It's basically family money." Then she said my brother needed it for something important. I said, "Important like what? School? Bills?" She hesitated, and my brother grinned like this was funny. I pulled up the statement and read it out loud. $2,100 at a rim shop, $1,800 for tint and detailing, $1,400 for a sound system, $2,900 for an exhaust and tune. He used my college money to turn my Civic into his little show-off car. My brother said, "It's an upgrade. Deal with it." I said, "So you took from me and you took my car." He laughed and said, "You're so dramatic." Mom jumped in fast and said, "Stop. He didn't steal. He just needed it." Then she said, "You can save again. You're good at that." I stared at them and realized they truly thought I'd swallow it, like always. I didn't scream. I just said, "Okay," and walked to my room. Behind me, I heard Mom tell him, "Give it a week. He'll get over it." That night, I gathered my registration and insurance. I printed my bank records and took screenshots of his Instagram posts showing off the rims and tint. He'd even posted my car like it was his prize. The next morning, before my shift, I went straight to the police station. I laid everything down and said my car was taken without permission and my money was withdrawn without my consent. The officer asked if I was sure I wanted to report my brother. I said, "Yes, he took $8,200 from my college fund." 2 hours into my shift, my phone buzzed. My brother sent a photo of my car in a parking lot, surrounded by his friends. His caption was, "Saturdays are for the boys." There was a location tag. I forwarded it to the officer and called the station. About 20 minutes later, they found him doing donuts in a grocery store parking lot, blasting music and showing off. They arrested him for reckless driving and unauthorized use of my car, and they towed it. Mom called me sobbing and begged me to drop the charges. She kept saying I was ruining his life over a mistake. I said, "A mistake doesn't cost $8,200, and I told her no.